Fethiye is not only a writer, but a leading human rights lawyer in Turkey. And her work challenges one of the great fault lines in Turkish society, and that's the unacknowledged genocide of the Armenian minority in Turkey in 1915. Her book, My Grandmother, told the story, the secret story of her own family. She was brought up as a Muslim, but discovered as a young woman that her grandmother was actually a survivor of one of the notorious death marches in 1915 and was taken from the arms of her own mother and brought up as a Muslim by a Turkish police officer. And Fethiye only discovered this as a young woman. As a lawyer, Fethiye defended the well-known and very brave, outspoken journalist and editor Hrant Dink, who was also one of the early figures to really try and challenge this taboo in Turkish society. And he was very shockingly assassinated outside his own offices of the newspaper Agos in 2007. Fethiye was his lawyer, but she continues to represent his family in their continuing fight for justice in Turkey. You say in your book that these terrible, terrible events that your grandmother told you about, you realised that she was actually telling you those events for the first time. And I'm wondering, what was the impact of that on you as a very young girl?
Kitabınızda söylüyorsunuz ki babaannenin size şeyleri anlattığı zaman onun ilk kimseye daha önce anlatmamış bunları, ilk olarak size anlatmış bunları. Bu sizi nasıl çarptı, nasıl etkiledi sizi?
Tabii elbette çok etkilendiğimi hatırlıyorum öğrendiğimde. Beni en son cümlem şu, işte bu suskunluk beni bu kitabı yazmaya itti. Çünkü şunu fark ettim ki bu öyküyü öğrendikten sonra anneannem yalnız değil. 1915'te binlerce kadın, yani genç kadın ve binlerce çocuk böyle alınmış ve Müslümanlaştırılmıştı.
I also like to say I was obviously very moved when I found out when I heard that story. But what struck me even more at the time was the silence kept by everybody on the subject. My grandmother was not alone. She was not alone. She was one of thousands of women and of children who had not spoken about this event after it had happened.
İlk öğrendiğimde elbette şok yaşadım.
I was extremely upset when I first heard about it.
So what you've done with this book, My Grandmother, and then with the book that you've subsequently published, Grandchildren, where you've done lots of interviews, is you've broken that silence.
Siz o zaman kitabınızla bu suskunluğu kırdınız. Yani ilk kitabınızı anneannemle kırdınız. Ondan sonra bir dahaki kitabınız Torunlar kitabı. Onlarla, insanlarla görüşme yaptınız kitabıyla. Bu suskunluğu son verdiniz, bu suskunluğu.
Yani tümüyle tabii son verebildik mi bilemiyorum ama şunu söyleyebilirim. Evet, en azından bu konuda o susturulmuş kadın ve çocukların hikayelerini duyurma konusunda sanıyorum ilk kitap oldu. Ama sonrasında o kadar çok kitap yayınlandı ki ve hala yayınlanmaya devam ediyor. Belki de güncel Türkiye'deki güncel yazının en önemli konularından biri şimdi bu. Torunlarda da, Torunlar kitabında da benim gibi torunlarla görüşerek Ayşegül Altınay isimli bir arkadaşımla birlikte onları toparlayarak yazdım.
Of course, mine was perhaps the first book on this subject, and it was it was one of the most important books. But following this, there have been many others. It's one of the most important topics which has been written about now in Turkey. And one of my colleagues, kimdi Altınay?
Ayşegül Altınay.
Ayşegül Altınay, o da kitap yazmıştır.
Beraber yazdık.
We've written another book together with my colleague Ms. Altınay. The only thing that did surprise me was that there was no that there was no court case and no prosecution when my book came out. My book was very well received, and there had been, every time other people had tried to approach a similar subject, they've been subject to court cases and to prosecution. For example, Elif Shafak and Orhan Pamuk I can also mention. But with my book, the thing that surprised me the most is it was just accepted, and I was not prosecuted, and no court cases were opened against me.
So a year after your book was published, Orhan Pamuk was prosecuted. 3 years later, your friend Hrant Dink was murdered. How, and you are still, you represented Hrant Dink when he was prosecuted for daring to challenge the very same subjects. You're continuing to represent his family in the fight for justice for Hrant. What is your assessment of how difficult it is now to speak openly about this subject?
Fakat geldiğimiz bu noktada şunu söyleyebilirim. Biraz da demin anlatmaya çalıştım. Gerçekten 10 yıl öncesine göre bugün Türkiye'de geçmiş daha rahat konuşulabiliyor ve tartışılabiliyor.
But I can say that we've come to a place now where, compared to 10 years ago, we can discuss these matters in Turkey a lot more comfortably and openly. Article 301 concerns itself with insulting the state, and that can result in a term in prison.
Nedir bunlar? Türklük örneğin.
For example, insulting Turkishness.
Ve özellikle geçmişe ilişkin.
And with a special effect to matters from the past.
Evet, yazılar bu kapsamda Türklüğe hakaret ya da Türk milletine hakaret kapsamında değerlendiriliyor. Örneğin Türk Silahlı Kuvvetleri, örneğin Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'nin devleti ve hükümetleri bu kapsamda. Kutsallık atfedilmiş ve bunlara özellikle dokunan yazarlar bu ceza kanunuyla cezalandırılıyor.
And they do use this Article 301 to punish and prosecute writers for insulting either the country or the Turkish Republic and other things which they've almost elevated to a sort of holy state.
Bu ceza kanunu hala olduğu gibi duruyor. Fakat mevcut hükümet
this penal law is still in place exactly as it was.
Yeah.
Bu davadan cezalandırmayı önlemek için bir değişiklik yaptı ve şöyle bir cümle getirdi oraya. 301'den dava açılabilmesini Adalet Bakanı'nın iznine bağladı. Yani Adalet Bakanı izin vermezse dava açılamayacak.
They've made one very tiny change to that law, the Article 301, and that is to say that no case can be opened unless the Ministry of Justice does approve that case.
Bu ifade özgürlüğü açısından asla bir güvence değil. Çünkü Adalet Bakanı değişebilir, konjonktür değişebilir ve yeniden insanlar 301. maddeden yargılanabilir ve ceza alabilirler.
This is no great safety net against people being prosecuted under this law because the minister can change and the ministry can change.
English Pen, as well as campaigning for freedom of expression here in the United Kingdom, we campaign abroad, and we've got a particular interest in Turkey this year. And we were campaigning for Fazıl Say, and who today some of you might have heard. He's a very eminent composer, writer and musician in Turkey, and he's received a suspended sentence of 10 months for insulting Islam. I wonder, should we draw particular conclusions from this conviction, or is this just part of a continuing trend within Turkey?
Biz PEN'in yönetmeni olarak yani biz değişik ülkelerde kampanyalarımız var ve bu sene Türkiye'de çok büyük kampanyalarımız oldu. Birisi de Fazıl Say ile ilgiliydi. Fazıl Say biliyorsunuz bugün bir karar verilmiş, yazardır, şairdir falan. Karar verilmiş. Onun Sorry, what was the end of the question?
Should we draw particular conclusions from this case, or is this just part of the continuing trend of restrictions on freedom of expression?
Bu davadan önemli yani noktalar alabilir miyiz? Önemli dersler alabilir miyiz? Yoksa bu sadece bir trend, bir giden yani? devam
Demin de
edemeyeceğim.
söylediğim gibi daha gidecek çok yolumuz var. Özellikle ifade özgürlüğü konusunda.
I would like to say, as I just said, we've still got an awfully long way to go, especially on the subject of freedom of speech.
Bu kararı ben de bugün burada öğrendim.
I heard about this sentence as well myself here.
Söylemin cezalandırılması, söylemin ceza yaptırımına maruz tutulması ne yazık ki hala bu ülkede geçerli. Umarım Yargıtay bu kararı bozar.
Yargıtay ne var?
Yargıtay bu kararı bozar.
I hope that the higher courts will actually overthrow this decision, because unfortunately it just shows that we do have still laws that it's really against speech in particular that we do.
Ama şunu da ekleyeyim, söylem cezalandırılıyor ama ülkenin son özellikle sadece 30 yılını ele alırsak binlerce faili meçhul cinayet henüz aydınlatılmadı ve katiller bulunmadı ve cezalandırılmadı.
I would like to say as well that although speech is being punished in this way, you can look at the last 30 years or so of Turkey's history, and there are an awful lot of unsolved murders, and the people are not being prosecuted for these terrible things that have been happening.
Orada cezasızlık kuralı devam ediyor ama ne yazık ki burada resmi söyleme, hakim söyleme aykırı ifadeler cezalandırılıyor.
And so you've got the situation where such awful crimes are not punishable, and yet to speak out or to write something is still a punishable offence.